I had always thought Jake was the easiest person to be with. When we first started dating, he was relaxed, easygoing, and genuinely caring. He never questioned what I wore, where I went, or who I was with. In fact, one of the things I loved most about him was his trust. He never hovered, never double-checked my messages, never got upset if I went out with friends or stayed late at work. So, when Halloween approached that year, I was excited. My friends and I had been planning for weeks a small costume party at my friend Megan's apartment, just a few blocks away. Nothing wild, nothing dangerous, just music, snacks, and laughs with people I had known for years. I texted Jake a few days before to let him know when I'd be leaving and when I expected to be back. He replied casually, "Sounds fun. Have a great time." Everything seemed normal. But the evening of the party, everything changed. As I was putting on my costume, a classic witch outfit, nothing revealing or outlandish, Jake suddenly asked me to sit down. There was a seriousness in his tone I had never heard before. "Hey, can we talk for a minute?" he said. I frowned. "Sure. What's up?" He hesitated, then said, "So, about tonight. I think you should be home by 11. I blinked. "Excuse me. What do you mean, should be home by 11? It's a party with friends, and we plan to stay until midnight. Why?" He looked uncomfortable, almost guilty. I don't know. I feel like that's reasonable. Halloween can get crazy. People drink, things happen. I just don't want you staying out too late." I was shocked. My eyebrows shot up. "Jake, you've literally never acted like this before. You've never given me a curfew in the 3 years we've been together. Why now?" He shrugged, trying to appear casual. "I guess I'm just worried. I mean, it's Halloween. You know how things can get." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm. "Jake, I understand being concerned, but this feels controlling. It's my life, and I can handle myself. I don't need a curfew. I've gone to parties before, and you've trusted me. Why is tonight different?" He didn't answer right away. He looked down, fidgeting with his hands. There was a tension in the room I hadn't noticed in him before. It was subtle, but it made my chest tighten. For the first time, I realized that Jake's trust, something I had always taken for granted, was being replaced by something else. Fear, doubt, or control. I couldn't quite tell yet. I tried reasoning. "Jake, I love you. I always have. But this is sudden, and it doesn't feel right. Can we compromise? I'll check in regularly, text you updates, and be home by midnight." "That's fair, isn't it?" He shook his head. "No. I don't think I can relax until you're home by 11. I can't help it. I need you safe." I felt a lump rise in my throat. "Jake, being safe doesn't mean being confined. I feel like you're treating me like a child. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm your girlfriend, your equal. You don't get to impose rules suddenly because you're scared." He ran a hand through his hair and leaned against the wall. I know it sounds controlling. I can't explain it. I don't want to fight, but I feel like if I let you stay out later, something bad could happen." I stared at him, torn between anger and disbelief. This wasn't the man I knew, the man I had trusted completely. "Jake, this isn't about safety. This is about control. You're letting fear dictate your actions, and it's not fair to me. You can't just demand things like this and expect me to comply without question." He looked pained, almost ashamed, but he didn't relent. "I'm sorry. I can't help it." That night, I left for the party, my emotions tangled in anger, hurt, and confusion. I told him I would text him every hour to check in. He agreed, though reluctantly, almost as if my compliance still didn't fully ease his worry. At the party, I tried to push thoughts of the curfew aside. Friends laughed, danced, and complimented each other's costumes. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of being restricted, even though I was free. Every buzz from my phone made me tense. Jake's messages, asking where I was, what I was doing, and reminding me of the 11 o'clock deadline. By 10:45, I had already had enough. I realized that if I followed this new pattern, our relationship would slowly become suffocating. I decided I couldn't allow that. I sent a text, "I'm leaving at midnight. Please trust me. I'm capable of taking care of myself." Jake's reply came almost immediately, "I can't. Come home now?" I froze. That was the moment I saw the new reality of Jake's behavior. It wasn't a simple concern anymore, it was an attempt to control, to dictate my actions. I felt a mix of fear and determination. Fear of how he might react, but determination to assert my independence. I left a group of friends at the party and walked outside, texting him one last time, "I'm leaving the party at midnight. This is my choice." The walk home felt longer than it should have, every step heavy with the weight of what was happening in my relationship. When I finally arrived, Jake was standing outside, pacing, his face a mixture of relief and frustration. "I told you to come home," he shouted the second he saw me. I stopped in my tracks. "Jake, I am home. Midnight. I did exactly what I said I would. Can we please talk calmly?" He ran a hand over his face and muttered, "I don't know why I can't relax. I just can't." I took a deep breath. "Jake, listen to me. This curfew, this sudden control, it's not about safety anymore. It's about fear, and fear doesn't justify controlling someone you love. I cannot be in a relationship where you suddenly dictate my actions. That's not love. That's power." He looked at me, eyes wide, as if finally realizing what he had done. I didn't mean to. I know you didn't mean to," I said, my voice shaking. "But intentions aren't enough. Your actions hurt me. If we can't respect each other's independence, we can't have a healthy relationship." That night, we argued for hours. Tears were shed, apologies were made, but something fundamental had shifted. The Jake I knew, the patient, understanding, and trusting man, was gone, replaced by someone driven by fear and the need for control. I loved him, but I could not accept this new dynamic. Over the following weeks, I reflected on what had happened. I realized that trust is fragile. It can be eroded slowly, almost imperceptibly, until one day you wake up and find someone you loved has become someone unrecognizable. And while I still cared for Jake, I knew that a relationship built on fear, even fear masked as concern, was unsustainable. I ended the relationship not out of anger, but out of necessity. I needed to reclaim my autonomy, my freedom, and my right to make choices without someone imposing arbitrary rules. It was one of the hardest decisions I had ever made, but it was also the most empowering. In the months that followed, I focused on myself, my friends, and my passions. I rebuilt confidence in my independence, knowing I could enjoy life without being policed. And though the memory of that Halloween curfew still lingered, it became a reminder that love should be liberating, not confining, and that sometimes, standing up for yourself is the most loving thing you can do. After I ended things with Jake, the first few days were surreal. The house felt emptier, quieter, but also freer. I could breathe without the weight of his sudden rules pressing down on me. I started noticing things I hadn't before, the small habits I had suppressed, the freedom I'd taken for granted. Cooking dinner at whatever time I wanted, leaving the lights on, choosing what to watch without consulting anyone. Every small decision felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I kept thinking back to moments that, at the time, had seemed insignificant. Like the time he suggested I shouldn't talk to a certain friend because he might influence me too much, or when he casually remarked that some of my hobbies were a bit too risky. At the time, I'd laughed them off, chalked it up to concern, affection, or his quirky sense of humor. Now, I realized those moments were breadcrumbs of control, subtle seeds that had been planted, waiting to grow. The Halloween curfew wasn't an isolated incident, it was the culmination of months, maybe years, of small manipulations and suggestions that chipped away at my independence. I spent the first week after the breakup reconnecting with my friends. They were supportive, relieved even, because they had seen the changes in Jake and worried about how I had been adapting. I realized that sometimes the people who love you can see what you cannot, and their perspective is invaluable. I started journaling, pouring all my thoughts and reflections onto paper, trying to untangle the confusion and guilt that lingered. In those journals, I wrote about the tension I had felt before the curfew, the subtle anxiety creeping in whenever Jake suggested a plan or comment about my life. I wrote about the moment I realized I couldn't comply with his demands without sacrificing my autonomy. And I wrote about the fear of standing up to someone I love, fear of confrontation, fear of anger, fear of losing him. But slowly, clarity emerged. I realized that love is not measured by how much someone sacrifices your independence or dictates your actions. Love should feel safe, not confined. Trust should be empowering, not restrictive. And respect should allow freedom, not impose rules born from fear. I started taking back control of my own schedule. I went to dinners, parties, and trips with friends without consulting Jake because, well, he wasn't part of my life anymore. And each time I exercised that freedom, I felt a rush of liberation, a sense of confidence I hadn't experienced in months. It was exhilarating and healing. There were moments when I missed him, the parts of him I had loved before the controlling tendencies emerged. But I quickly reminded myself, I wasn't missing Jake. I was missing the idea of what he used to be. And the reality was, that person no longer existed in the same way. The man I loved had become someone who couldn't trust me without imposing limits, and that wasn't compatible with the life I wanted. Over time, I began dating again, cautiously at first. I learned to spot red flags early, to recognize subtle signs of control, and to set boundaries before a relationship could become unhealthy. I discovered that I didn't need to compromise my autonomy for love. I needed someone who respected it, nurtured it, and celebrated it alongside me. One evening, a few months after the breakup, I went to a costume party, not the same one as that infamous Halloween, but another celebration with friends. I wore a costume that made me feel confident and free, danced without hesitation, laughed without looking at my phone for approval, and stayed out until the last song played. And as I walked home alone afterward, under the crisp night sky, I felt a sense of empowerment that I hadn't felt before. I was fully, unapologetically myself. Looking back, I realized that the Halloween curfew had been a turning point, not just in the relationship, but in my life. It had forced me to confront boundaries, trust, and self-respect in ways I hadn't before. It had taught me the value of standing up for myself, even when it meant risking heartbreak. And ultimately, it led me to a deeper understanding of what it means to be loved and to love. Freedom, trust, and respect are not optional, they are essential. Even now, when I think about that night, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons learned, for the strength I discovered within myself, and for the clarity that allowed me to rebuild my life on my own terms. The Halloween curfew was shocking, yes, but it also awakened me to a truth I might never have seen otherwise, that real love does not confine, and real respect does not impose. From that experience, I carry a quiet confidence, an inner knowledge that I will never compromise my independence for anyone. And while I may meet new people, form new relationships, and build new connections, I know that the line of control will never again be crossed without my consent. I have learned that love without freedom is not love at all, and I am determined to never settle for anything less. A few months after ending things with Jake, I met someone new, Liam. It wasn't a dramatic encounter, in fact, it was almost mundane. We bumped into each other at a coffee shop, both reaching for the same latte on a crowded morning. I laughed, he laughed, and somehow that brief, awkward moment turned into a conversation that lasted an hour. Liam was different in ways that felt refreshing and safe. He asked about my day, genuinely listened, and didn't try to control any part of my schedule. There were no curfews, no subtle tests, no underlying tension. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could exist fully as myself without worrying about rules or judgment. We started spending time together slowly, cautiously. I told him about the Halloween incident and my experience with Jake, not as a way to complain, but as a way to share my history and set boundaries. Liam listened patiently, never interrupting, never judging. When I finished, he said, "I'm glad you trust me enough to tell me." I would never want to impose on you or make you feel unsafe in your own life. That one statement, simple, honest, and respectful, made me feel a weight lift off my chest. I realized how much I had been carrying Jake's fear and control without recognizing it. Liam's respect for my autonomy was healing in itself. We began doing ordinary things together, going for walks, cooking dinner, going to the theater, but everything was built on mutual agreement. I didn't have to explain every minute of my day. He didn't demand updates or approvals. When we disagreed about something small, it was resolved through conversation, not threats or emotional manipulation. One evening, we attended a costume party for Halloween, almost a year after the infamous curfew. I felt a twinge of nervousness as I got ready, half expecting someone to impose restrictions or question my choices. But Liam smiled at me, took my hand, and said, "Go have fun. I'll be here when you get back," excited to hear all about it. That night, I danced, laughed, and stayed out as late as I wanted. When I returned home, Liam greeted me with a warm smile and genuine curiosity about my evening, not criticism or concern. The contrast was stark, and the relief was profound. For the first time, I could see what a relationship built on respect truly felt like. As weeks turned into months, I noticed subtle changes in myself as well. I no longer second-guessed my choices, no longer felt anxious about being independent. I started taking risks, joining new clubs, traveling solo, pursuing creative projects I had put aside during my time with Jake. My confidence grew, and I realized that reclaiming my autonomy wasn't just about freedom from control. It was about rediscovering my sense of self. Liam never once tried to replace Jake in my memories. He didn't belittle my past experiences or make me feel guilty for my previous relationship. Instead, he offered a safe space where I could process, heal, and grow. And slowly, I found myself falling in love again, not out of need, but out of choice, conscious and deliberate. There were moments when I reflected on what could have happened if I had stayed with Jake, or if I had compromised on my independence. I realized that the loss I had once felt, the heartbreak, the tension, the fear, was a necessary step toward understanding my worth. Without those experiences, I might never have recognized the difference between fear-driven control and genuine care. Through this journey, I also learned to trust myself again. I could recognize red flags, set boundaries, and speak up without guilt. I could embrace love without surrendering my autonomy. And perhaps most importantly, I understood that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, not fear. Over time, my friendship circle expanded. My parents noticed the change in me. They saw me smiling more, living fully, and setting boundaries with kindness but firmness. My friends celebrated my growth, and I realized that the strength I had developed wasn't just about surviving a controlling relationship, it was about thriving after it. As I sit on the porch with Liam beside me, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I feel a profound sense of peace. The house, the space I fought to protect, is no longer just a symbol of what I owned, it's a sanctuary of who I have become. Every decision, every boundary, every lesson learned is etched into these walls. And sharing this life with someone who values me without trying to control me makes it all the more meaningful. That Halloween curfew, which had once felt like the end of the world, now feels like the beginning of everything I needed. It forced me to confront boundaries, demand respect, and recognize that love should never come at the expense of autonomy. And in doing so, it led me to a love that truly honors who I am. Years have passed since that fateful Halloween, and looking back, I can see just how much that night shaped my life. At the time, the curfew felt suffocating, unfair, and shocking. I was angry, hurt, and scared that the person I loved could suddenly try to control me. But that experience forced me to confront something essential: my own boundaries, my self-worth, and the kind of love I deserved. Today, I live in the same house I fought so hard to protect, but it's not just a house anymore, it's a symbol of resilience. Every corner reflects my choices, my effort, and my freedom. I've added new touches over the years, painted walls in colors I love, created spaces where friends and family can gather, and even started a small garden that has become my sanctuary. Every plant, Every shelf, every piece of furniture tells a story of independence and self-determination. Liam is still by my side. Our relationship is grounded in mutual respect, trust, and understanding. He never imposes curfews, rules, or expectations beyond what's fair in a partnership. He celebrates my achievements, encourages my passions, and respects my autonomy. And I do the same for him. We've learned together that love is not about possession or control, it's about support, partnership, and shared joy. I've also learned to trust myself in ways I never did before. I no longer second-guess my instincts or feel guilty for asserting my needs. I set boundaries clearly, and I communicate openly about what I need in a relationship. That clarity has made my life richer, more balanced, and far less stressful. The anxiety I once carried worrying about being watched, controlled, or second-guessed is gone. In its place is confidence, peace, and a strong sense of self. Sometimes, I think about Jake. I remember the subtle comments, the testing of boundaries, and the curfew that triggered everything. I don't feel bitterness or regret anymore. I feel gratitude for the lesson, for the awakening, and for the path it led me to. I understand now that some relationships exist not to last, but to teach you about yourself. That night was a wake-up call that showed me I could stand firm, reclaim my freedom, and still find love that respects me fully. I also reflect on how much I've grown in my friendships and connections. I no longer feel isolated in making decisions, and I share my experiences to help others recognize the signs of subtle control. I've become a source of support for friends going through similar situations, encouraging them to value their independence while seeking healthy relationships. It's empowering to know that my experience, once painful, can now guide and strengthen others. Even my family noticed the change. Where they once worried about me bending to someone else's will, they now see a woman confident in her choices, assertive in her boundaries, and capable of maintaining love without losing herself. I've repaired strained relationships, strengthened old bonds, and even inspired younger family members to stand up for themselves in their own relationships. Life has become a balance of joy, responsibility, and freedom. I travel, pursue my passions, host friends, and explore new experiences without fear of judgment or restriction. Liam and I plan adventures together, but each plan is made with respect for each other's autonomy. I feel fully alive, fully in control, and fully seen. Looking back, that Halloween curfew feels almost symbolic now. It marked the moment I realized that love should not come with chains, and that fear has no place in a healthy partnership. It forced me to confront my boundaries, assert my self-respect, and seek a love that truly honors me. Without that night, I might never have recognized the difference between control and care, fear and trust. And as I sit here on the porch, watching the sunset with Liam by my side, I feel complete. I've built a life grounded in respect, freedom, and genuine connection. I've turned past pain into wisdom, control into empowerment, and fear into clarity. The house, the relationships, and the life I've created are all reflections of the choices I made to honor myself. I realize now that happiness is not about avoiding hardship, it's about learning from it, growing through it, and using it to shape a life you can be proud of. The curfew was shocking, yes, but it awakened something in me that I will carry forever: the courage to stand firm, the clarity to see what I deserve, and the wisdom to choose love that lifts me up rather than confines me. And in that clarity, I finally understand. I am in control of my life, my choices, and my happiness. I am free, I am loved, and I am fully, unapologetically myself.